Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Spin Cycle podcast talking to the groups, the brands, and the personalities that make London and the UK an incredible place to be a cyclist. Someone on today that NJ and I have had on our list of people to speak to from the start, really. A lot of people will know who this person is, would have known him for a long time through some of their incredible fundraising work, ultra cycling, and just generally being a great person to aspire to be. It's Chris Hall. Chris, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Thank you. That was very flattering. Very flattering. It's weird being on this side of a podcast, but also quite nice, actually.
Good.
I don't have to do the hard work. You have to do the hard work.
That's what you think.
So long-time listeners will know we typically break the podcast into three sections, right? So that's who are you, how did you get into cycling? Middle part will be tell us about your thing. We've talked to Chris about his extensive career cycling and doing his events, and then the third part we'll do is going to be the Q&A, white bib short chat, of which we've already had a slight bit off air, so I think we might have a friend, and then we'll just sort of wrap it up at the end. So Chris, to go into section one, why don't you kind of tell us who you are and maybe how you got into cycling, really?
Oh, there's many funny stories about how I got into cycling, and it all starts from not actually even really caring about cycling, if I'm honest. As a kid, like growing up, I think like everyone, I used to ride a bike. My dad refused to buy me a bike for a very long time because I have a sister that's a little bit older than me, and he was like, you can ride your sister's bike. And I actually rode a bike before I could properly walk. That's my little weird kind of claim to fame as a kid. But I think that was just because I was lazy, if I'm honest. And then cycling, and then I just sort of stopped riding. I don't know why. I think video games and the PlayStation 1 came out. I think that was a big reason for it. Probably for a lot of people of my generation as well. PlayStation 1 was probably the best console, or N64. I could go either way. Anyway, so I stopped riding, completely stopped riding, and it wasn't a passion or a hobby or anything really. And then when I was in secondary school, I started playing rugby, and I played I would say a good level, but I think most people would be like, yeah, it's okay. I was county level, so I think that's like
decent, mate. Decent.
It's okay, right? You wouldn't say I couldn't play rugby at that level. Yeah, it's fine. It's okay. I was a prop, which is quite funny because I'm not particularly tall, and I was big. I was a big guy when I was younger, and I was 120 kilos. If that helps in perspective of size.
Yeah, I was a big guy.
And I'm 183 centimeters, which I think is just short of 6 foot.
Yeah,
it's big.
Big unit. Big unit.
So I played county level. I had my cousin, who was much better than me, had tryouts for England.
Wow.
And he was very, very good. But both of us got injured quite badly within quite a close proximity to each other. I dislocated my knee the wrong way, which I never knew there was a wrong way. But there's a way which is significantly worse than the right way. I don't know what way is wrong or right. But I was quite quickly told after doing that I couldn't play rugby anymore. It was quite, I would have been 17, maybe 18. It's quite, as a young age where I was like, actually, because I wasn't a sporty kid, and it was like the first outlet that I had into a sport that I was actually quite enjoying. And I was told, you can't do this anymore because I'd effectively like damaged the tendons and the nerves in my leg, and they were never really going to get better. So,
and
I was then gone.
It's kind of at that point. So I played rugby at school as well. When you're like playing through secondary school, between the period of like 15 to 17, people all grow at different sizes. So then when you get to like 17 or 18, actually, that's when everyone starts being a similar sort of size, or people take it more seriously. So if you were taking it seriously at county level, it's almost when you just start being able to compete with people, right? Because you're the similar sort of size.
Yeah. I would say I was an early grower, shall we say.
Mm.
I had a beard at quite a young age, but that's such a weird way of wording it. An early grower.
We can leave that in. That's fine.
We'll breeze over that one. So I was like, I basically was like, I was pretty good, but I had this injury, and they sort of said like, you probably shouldn't play anymore in case you make it worse. My cousin at the same time, he dislocated his shoulder, and now his shoulder pops out all the time, basically. So it was from both of us being at a very good level, playing and performing quite well. He was always very sporty. I wasn't. Within the course of about, I don't know, it must have been a month, neither of us could really play anymore. But I was basically told that my way of rehabilitating this would be to cycle, low impact, good for getting the movement in.
Mm.
And I was at university as well, and while I was at university, I was working in a bar in Shoreditch, and I was working for Apple as well as studying architecture, which is quite a lot to do at once.
Yeah.
Because architecture is a degree which notoriously is not allow you to sleep, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I couldn't really, afford a lot. And the logical thing for me was to use a bike to get to and from and around, and I bought a red bike that was, I think it was 2 sizes too big for me. But I swear, everyone, when you buy your first bike, you end up buying one that's too big for you anyway.
Yeah,
I think everyone's done it.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
Evan cycles, Fenchurch Street, first paycheck. It was a Specialized Alley. I ride a 54. That bike was a 58. I remember I spent...
You're the same as me. That's exactly what I did.
Yeah, I spent all of my money on it.
Red one as well.
Yeah, spent all of my money on it. And then I was living in Suffolk at the time with my parents. So I walked the bike, because I didn't have any pedals, obviously. I walked the bike from Fenchurch Street all the way to Liverpool Street. I then put it on a packed commuter train, and then my dad turned up in his car, and he was like, "Why the fuck have you got a bike?" And I had no money, and my parents had to bail me out. My first ever job. Yeah. So I did the same thing. I did exactly the same thing as you. Yeah.
And it was they were selling bikes the wrong size to people, and I didn't know about bike fitting or anything like that, but it was I actually spray painted it because I hate the color red. I hate it, so I spray painted it black. And also, I wanted it not to look flashy or expensive. What's hilarious in hindsight, that was a very, very cheap bike compared to the bikes I get to ride now, which I'm very lucky that I get to ride. But at the time, it was a bike which cost me a lot of money. It's a large proportion of what I was earning from working in a bar and working in retail. And so I spray painted it black because I wanted it to look shit, and it did look shit, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So I started riding that around, and then one of my best mates from school, who used to ride quite a lot. Used to is the key part of it, because he's actually quite bow-legged, so he struggles riding because he's bow-legged. It's uncomfortable. Yeah. But he was and still is, without riding a bike, a very good bike rider. And he got chatting to this guy who's called Treve, who had started a cycling club. And this cycling club was based out in Windsor. And my mate Ant used to drive out and ride with these people. He basically met this guy Treve on holiday with his family and just got on really well with him. So Treve started this cycle club with a guy called Sean, and they called it Ripcore and made it look all flashy and jazzy, gave it a big logo, and they're both graphic designers, so of course they went to town with making it look absolutely brilliant. And they basically set this club up because they're older guys, they like a drink. They are, in their own words, they are the stereotypical mammal. They've even made a film about the fact that they're mammals, called In Riding with Mammals. So they're good guys. They're funny. So anyway, Ant was like, "Oh, you should come and ride with this lot. Like, they're good people. Come hang out with them." And Ripcore was the club that first introduced me to the Pace Centre, which is the kids' school I do a lot of fundraising for, which looks after 107 kids with cerebral palsy, based in Aylesbury, so kind of nearish to them. And that was when I started, I guess, taking cycling a little bit more seriously and sort of kind of enjoying it a bit more. As a still very much, I would say, a recreational cyclist. Like I was doing it in my weekends and just riding with some guys in this club that I met. And through that club, I made a really good connection of friends who I'd learned a hell of a lot about how to ride, to be honest. And one of the guys in the club who passed away a couple of years ago now, he was the knowledge of how to ride in a group. We called him Pello because he knew all about how to ride as a group of people. And he was very, genuine and looked after you and showed you like what ride etiquette was. And because I think sometimes it can come across as maybe like mansplaining quite easily. And he was very good at doing it to someone that just did. I didn't know. I didn't have a clue. And as that sort of progressed, I was very conscious that I wanted to fundraise more for Pace, this charity, and Ripcore organised these events literally around the world where you could come and ride something and effectively, ride across the country and see the country and raise money for Pace. And the first one I did with them was across Romania, which was
nice,
amazing, absolutely incredible. We did like 5 days riding across Romania, maybe 7 days. I can't quite remember, but it was riding across Romania with a group of guys, and like we all really sort of bonded over that. And like some of the days was amazing, beautiful weather, hot, incredible. And then some days it was like biblical storms. But that was the first thing I did, and everyone was riding 23mm tires, and it was quite a lot of gravel, so there was punches everywhere. But we did the Trans-for-Garrison Highway, which still to this day I think is the most beautiful road one of the most beautiful roads I've ever ridden. It was first time I'd ever done like a mountain pass, and I'd just blown away by it. And so that was that point where I was like, fuck, this is fucking cool. Like that was literally the moment where I was like, this is fucking cool. Like I didn't realize quite, I wouldn't say I was a well-traveled kid, and I didn't really realize what was outside of, the UK so much. And it wasn't just the scenery; it was the people, the conversations, like being invited into like houses in villages to have a cup of coffee, and it'd be the hottest cup of coffee in the world. But it was just, the thought was really nice. And one of the bits I remember is one of the guys had a cycling cap, and he gave it to one of the kids whose brakes were broken on his bike. So we stopped, we fixed his brakes, and then gave him a cap, and it was great. And the kid would have been like, I don't know, 7, something like that, quite a young kid. And then when I came back after that, I was like, that was really cool. And I think that's the point where I kind of thought, you know what, like maybe I'm all right at this longer stuff that's a bit more endurance focused, because I never really felt particularly tired during it, in all honesty. Like I felt tired, but compared to the other guys I was with, I felt all right. And I knew I wanted to do some more fundraising for Pace, so I sort of pitched to the guys at Ripcore about riding around Richmond Park for 24 hours. And this is a nice segue to a previous episode of yours. This is the first time I ever met Jordan from Giro.
Oh.
Hey, shout out Jordan.
Nicest man in the world. And so I rode around Richmond Park for 24 hours, and we made like a little film about it, because the guys in Ripcore, they, graphic design, there's film guys in there, they want to make something about it. It was great fun. And I got like special approval from the Royal Parks to leave a car in the car park, because I wanted to have a car to be able to store food and stuff like that. And that was a really, like, for me, like the exciting point where I'd started riding more around London. This is 2016. So back then I think the cycling community in London has changed a lot since 2016, nearly 10 years now. And in 2016, there was a community, but it was much smaller than it is now.
Yeah.
And I met so many people before doing that challenge through riding a bike in Richmond or Regent's Park that there was when I did that, there was this amazing like camaraderie about supporting it, which was for me was like, I'm quite an anxious person. So like I was very overwhelmed by it, but I met some of my closest friends through it, Jimmy and Emily, Atticus, formerly Atticus, I should say. I met them kind of through it and around that time. And then my mate Rich, who runs Workshop Coffee, and then my mates Jess and George, who are now married and live in the Peak District. Like that was the first time I met George, for example, was because he was working for InfoCrank back then. And I really, that was a really special time for me around that 2016, 2017 time, in terms of there felt like the community was a very positive place. There wasn't much like, you weren't really seeing as many incidents and accidents. You weren't really seeing as much bad shit that seems to be popping up at the moment. And so subsequently, not long after that challenge, I did that in the summer of 2016. And in 2017, I decided to, or the end of 2016, I decided to ride 107 kilometers every day for 107 days. So I stupidly started it two days before my birthday, which was stupid. And I mean, it is what it is. And I finished it the day before the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Tour of Flanders.
Come on.
And very, very intentionally, because I wanted the last day to be the Tour of Flanders. It's my favourite race. I just love it. I love going there. I love seeing it live. So I wanted to celebrate on the actual race, and it was the edition that Sagan and Lizzie Deignan won.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
so
brilliant.
It was a cool edition to be there. Yeah.
Yeah, cracker.
Yeah. And so I wanted to finish anyway. I wanted to make sure I finished it the day before the Tour of Flanders, and I wanted the last day to be the sportif for the Tour of Flanders, which is a lot more than 107 kilometers. But these things happen. And that was, I still vouch for that being in the top 3 hardest things I've ever done. And I think because I was still working in architecture, still had a full-time job. I was trying to do this 107 kilometers around working a 9-to-5 job, which is not 9 to 5 in architecture. It's more like 9 to 8.
What? How did you?
That's at
what
least
was a typical day like?
Let's
smash
4 hours.
out like, okay. So like you go into work at like what, 8, 9? Are you right? Is this 107 all in one go, or have you like
across the course of the day? So I was getting up at 5, riding until 8:45 probably. Right. So I'd be up at 5. By the time I'd got like dressed and woken up and had about a litre of coffee, it was, it's like an hour gone in the morning. And then I'd be in the park. By the time I got to Regent's Park, I was trying to get there generally for like 6-ish, 5:30, 6, and then riding until probably being in the park until 8:30-ish. Get to work, and literally I'd give myself between 15 and 20 minutes to get to be at work, showered and at my desk. And then what would happen is that I'd be really good at it at the start of the week, at starting early and getting it done. And then I'd go out on my lunch break and just do like half an hour around Regent's Park just to because I worked quite near Regent's Park. Yeah, so I'd just do it in my civvies, go and do some laps to add up on the distance.
No.
Yeah, and then I would finish it off after work, and I'd basically ride to Regent's Park, lap around there, and then ride home. And basically my rule that I set myself is I had to do that 107 kilometers before midnight. Now, in the first week, I think it was, so it's 107 kilometers every day, and I couldn't run over into the next day.
What's quite enjoyable, Chris, we don't know each other quite well, but what's quite enjoyable, what you've just told me, is that you gave yourself until midnight. So then the next day, you were up again at 5, and you're like, were there ever any times where you were going, all right, fuck it, I'll just do it quite late at night when I've got home and had a chill, and you've gone up to midnight, got home, hang up the bike, and then 5 hours later, that bike's winking at you, going, come on, mate, got to do 50k around Regents.
So within the first week, I was stuck in the office until about maybe nearly 11 o'clock, and I think I had like 30k to do. So I think I went very, very hard to get that 30k done before midnight. It might have been less than 30k. I can't quite remember, but it was very close to the point of being like, okay, this is a week in, and I've already broken my rule that I said at the start of this challenge. But I didn't, thankfully. But what would happen as the week would go on, I wouldn't be able to get up as early because I was shattered. So it would flip. So I'd end up doing more riding after work than I would do before work. And then the weekend would basically be spent having a massive lay-in and then effectively riding to Windsor or Ascot or something like that, like doing the bun run effectively, because from my flat to the Cinema Bun Cafe and back was 107 kilometers. So
perfect.
Well, it might have been slightly longer. It might have been 100. It was over 107k, but not crazy over. And that route is flat, so that was a big kind of appeal to it. So that sort of stands up as one of the hardest things I've ever done. It's in the top. I say it's in the top three. The top three, I don't really know which one's first, second, or third because they're all just hard. But it's in the top three. And then after that, I was like, I mean, that took a lot out of me emotionally more than anything. I actually put on quite a lot of weight doing it, and having since subsequently spoken to a nutritionalist, he explained to me that it's because your body's exhausted and it's holding on to your fat reserves. So I put on quite a bit of weight during it. I think I probably put on 20 odd kilos, which was at that point, I was like, oh, someone's got a boy racing nearby.
That's me.
It's your car outside, isn't it?
It's the whip. It's my wife's Polo.
So, spoiler on the back.
Oh, come on, mate. Yeah, and the fuel free bike carrier too when I go to France.
I mean, I drive an estate, so I can't really say much, can I? But yeah, like at the end of that challenge, physically I didn't actually feel too bad, and then technically the 108th day, I just woke up, got on my bike, and did a bike ride because it was like automatic. And then I was in Belgium, and I was like, it's fucking freezing. What the fuck am I doing? I don't need to ride my bike. So I rode back to the hotel we were staying in, and I still somehow did like 30k. But I was like, I remember very distinctly thinking, what the fuck am I doing? I don't need to ride a bike today. But when you've done that for 3.5 months, it's like it almost becomes automatic. But the bit I struggled with was the mental side of it. Like I got quite severely depressed. And I think a lot of that is caused by spending so much of that winter in the dark. Like when I was working in architecture, I was in an office. Like I wasn't really outside and seeing much daylight, in all honesty. So I basically spent 3.5 months not getting enough natural light, and I really struggled with it. And Jimmy and Emily were the rocks through that, and I will always, and I'm very happy to say it, that they got me through that because they were there and supported me throughout it and helped me in so many different ways, more than they ever will realize. It was just things like being like, I'd get a text or a phone call, be like, how you doing today? And I'd be like, oh, I'm not good. And Emily would be like, I've ordered pizza to turn up at your house. Like, it's just little things like that, because having to think about cooking and stuff was all just so many different things that I couldn't cope with. But it lit the spark that got me interested in this more endurance thing. And I guess the longer challenges, the charity challenges, and the ultra races, it kind of lit that spark. And I guess it snowballed and crescendoed from that point, really, because it wasn't that long after that where I actually quit my job. And I quit for not just really, I didn't really quit for the reason of that. I actually quit because I was not in a good headspace. I was really not in a good place. And I said to my director at the time, I said to him very seriously, I was like, I need to quit. And I think he didn't expect it. And he was like, okay, why? And I was like, and I said to him, I had a very good relationship with him. We were quite jokey, but I said, like, I don't genuinely know if I will be here in 2 or 3 months' time if I carry on working here. And he was like, what do you mean? And I said, I don't think I will physically be here. I don't trust myself. I will no longer be a person. And I remember him looking at me being like, he's not fucking joking. I remember, when you can tell someone is looking at you and actually really taking in what you're saying and being like, you're being very honest here, and like just opening up so much vulnerability at this point. And he said to me, I'm not going to let you quit. And I was like, okay. And he was like, I will make you redundant so you can. I don't know if he works there anymore. If he doesn't work there anymore, this could get him in trouble. But he basically said, I'm not going to let you quit. I'll make you redundant so that you can have a payout and you can work out what to do and you can use that to help get the support that you need. And I will always be very thankful for that. And that was when I left architecture, was that moment there. And that was 2017. And I quit an industry that I spent a very large proportion of my life studying and funding, because for me, it wasn't right for my own mental well-being and my own stability and sanity and my own health. And I think there's a lot of the time people don't necessarily value that as much as they should. It's a thing that's often undervalued. So, there's that really like common phrase, isn't there, which is like, you should, I'm going to butcher it or get it wrong. It's like, you should work to live, not live to work. What way around is it?
That's it.
That was the right way around. So you should work to live, not live to work. So that always kind of sat with me when around that point when it was like, well, as long as I can make sure I have an income coming in somehow and I can pay the bills, like I don't need loads of money. Money's not a driver for me. What's a driver for me is contact with my friends and family, experiences, and effectively freedom and flexibility. Like, of course, an element of that does come from having the funds to be able to do stuff. But as far as I'm concerned, as long as I can pay the bills, I'm quite content. I don't want anything else, because I want to having a good lifestyle and a good life with my loved ones. And when I say loved ones, I don't just mean family. I mean my friends as well. I'm very lucky to have a very beautifully close-knit group of friends that I trust explicitly and bare my soul to. And they're the people I want to spend the time with. Like, I don't want to lose that time, like, and lose it doing something I fucking hate, and which is not good for my own, as I said, my own mental health and stuff. And that's when I guess like the doing stuff with Movember kind of came in, was when I was getting counselling and support. And, I have seen a therapist on and off for 4, 5, 6, 7 years now. And I think it's really good. It's really good for people to, first of all, for people to talk about it openly, because especially as guys, we're not very good at that. And I think there's no shame in showcasing and sharing vulnerability, and actually speaking to someone who's neutral is an amazing thing to help you as a person and to help you grow and emotionally support yourself, as well as being there to emotionally support your friends and family. And then, I guess like from that moment, after quitting architecture, it was kind of like I did a lot of freelance stuff, and that allowed me to have some flexibility, and and then I started, me and George then ended up starting Jam Cycling together, and that gave me flexibility and was a great like inward point into the cycling industry and trying to understand it and learn more than anything. And at the same time as doing all of that kind of stuff, like the sort of cycling ultra races and I guess challenges kind of just spiraled out of control.
Should we?
Man, that was a long tangent.
I mean,
I enjoyed it. I have one question. It's not even cycling related. It's, I guess, when you spend your life with architecture and like dedicate your life to that, and then you leave it, is there any parts of architecture that you still enjoy at all?
That is a great question. I enjoy any of it? I still do some freelance design and architecture work, but I pick and choose what I do. It's very much like if it sounds interesting and it excites me, I will do it. And I do still like design. I very much enjoy design as you know, in general. I love going to galleries and museums, and I do like the history of it, and I like sharing and showcasing that side of it, because there's a lot of, from doing all those years of studying, because when you study architecture, people think you just study architecture. You actually study architecture, fashion, graphic design, product design, furniture design, textile. Because you have to encompass so much of it. And that's, I learned a lot from my tutor, who was he still is around, this amazing guy called Leighton Reed, who, there's a couple of things that always stick out to me that he said to me. And one of them was always look up, because you miss so much. And the other one he always said to me was always be a sponge. And I remember thinking that's a weird thing to say to someone, but actually it makes complete sense. Like the thing that I enjoy is learning about that, you know, design and creativity, and and then being able to share what I've learned. And I was in Barcelona last weekend. My partner did the Barcelona Marathon, which is nuts because I could never imagine doing a marathon. And we went to see Sagrada Familia, which is the Gaudi Cathedral, and I've been and seen it like 6 or 7 times, and it fascinates and amazes me. And I didn't realize how much I knew about it, like just from being there so many times. And my partner's seen it once before, and we had one of our other friends there as well who'd never seen it before. She was asking all these questions about it, and she's like, "How do you know all this stuff?" And I was like, "I don't really know. It just seems to be in my brain." So that side of it I quite enjoy, and I still enjoy, I guess, design for myself, which could be, you know, collaborating with a brand to do something in particular. I'm very lucky to get to do some quite cool collaborations with certain brands. Doing stuff in my own house, like I enjoy that side of it as well. But would I ever design a house again? I don't think I would. I really don't think I would. Interior stuff I enjoy doing, but I don't think I'd ever design a house again. I find I did a lot of stuff in like shopping centers, and I get like PTSD going into like a Westfield shopping center, because I think a lot of people do, right? But I really struggle with it because
they keep you in. I've watched when I was at design school, my final major project was about, I did it on like spaces, and there was, I think around, I forgot what his name is, but he did some program. It was like some famous architect, and he was talking about like there's 3 episodes. One was on work, one was on sort of arenas and like lifestyle, and the other one was on like your home. And then he was talking about Westfield, and like the Westfield in London has all of that, you know, all the glass on top of it. It's all to make your eye point towards to all the shops, so that you constantly walk around and you look in the shops and you kind of get lost in it, and then you can't find the exit, so you're just in there forever.
Do you know the Blue Water Shopping Centre in Kent is is a triangle, and the reason why they designed it as a triangle was so that if you have to basically walk around the whole shopping centre to get to anywhere you want to, and the points of the triangle is basically like a Debenhams, a House of Fraser, and some other big, Marks and Spencers. And they very intentionally have put them on the corners, one because it's the big units, but also it forces you to transfer around the whole thing. Shopping centres are very cleverly designed to fuck with your heads. That's it. And I hate them.
Should we head to section 2, and we'll hear all about the great work Chris has been doing? Thank you. Cool.
That was great.
Legit.
I can talk for England. I told you I could talk for England.
It's good. It's good. You know, you can tell Gareth Winter after his title for longest show.
Yeah.
How long was Gareth's one?
I think it was about hour 40.
But
we recorded for a long time.
The difference is Gareth can talk a lot about. He's a very Gareth is a very interesting man. Do you know?
Yeah.
You can put this in your podcast if you want. I am absolutely fine with it. Gareth probably won't care either. The first time I met Gareth, right, we did this ride in Belgium, and it was me, Gareth, Francis Cade was on it, and Johan Maceo was on it, and like basically Johan Maceo's like posse, which is like he's got like this entourage, and they're all very Belgian. They're all lovely, very Belgian entourage. Like he is like a rock star in Belgium, which is quite cool when you're hanging around with him. It's quite cool. So we did this ride anyway around Belgium, and there was probably like 20 of us on it, and there was this hotel that we were staying in one night, and Gareth was like, "Oh, I've been in this hotel before," and I was like, "Oh yeah, is it nice?" And he said to me, "Yeah, it's really nice. It's got fuck dogs in it." And I was like, and I remember looking at him being like, "Did you just say fuck dogs?" And he was like, "Yeah, it's got fuck dogs on the bed." And I was like, "What's a fuck dog?" And he was like, every room in this hotel has a toy dog on the bed. And apparently that's a fuck dog. So that's the first time I met Gareth.
Welcome back, everyone. Chris, fresh from watching your YouTube, I saw that you did Strada Bianchi. Can you tell me about it? Or tell us about it? There you go. Yes. Cool. There we go.
For listeners that haven't realised, we've already done this.
Because I'm going to be very self-indulgent, I'm going to ask you every question about Strada Bianchi Sporting with Miles, previous guest as well.
Also a lovely human.
I saw him on Monday, and he said it completely killed him.
I watched the video this morning, just before I watched it yesterday, and he looked like he bonked, like it looked fine, and then it just disappeared from your videos.
He was absolute. Like, I mean, I probably didn't help things because I rode. I wouldn't say I rode hard. I definitely didn't ride hard, but I rode at a pace that was a consistent and constant pace because that's how I ride. I'm like a tractor. I like to ride consistently. Like, it's not easy. It's pushing on the pedals. The chain is tight, as Gareth would say. And I think there was a section on that Sportif, which is like a long straight road, and Miles just sat on my wheel and didn't really say anything. And he's taller than me. And he's a big guy. And I think that might have been the point where he broke. Because not long after that, I looked behind. I didn't hear it. I'm half deaf as well. So, you know, people can be talking to me on one side. I haven't got a bloody clue really if they're saying much to me. It's all muffledly muted, especially if it's windy. I struggle to hear. And so I looked, I thought, God, fuck, he's being quiet. I hope he's all right. And I looked around and I couldn't even see him in the distance. I was like, shit. So I went and stopped and bumped into another guy that we were there with, who was on the side of the road, also on the cusp of bonking, and stopped and waited for him. And then he appeared, and I was like, "Are you all right, mate?" And he was like, "Nah." Nah. Bless him. Although Strada Bianchi it is a classic. Well, it is a monument. I'm going to say it. It is it could be a lowercase m monument, but it is a monument.
But what they need some modern monuments.
Yeah, that's a good way of wording it. It is a modern monument. It was cool to witness Pogacar's just
nuke fest,
dominance, nuke fest, explosion, whatever you want to call it. Like, it was.
I will go at 80k to go, and it actually goes at 80k to go.
81 is the fact that
it's the fact
miles. That no one thought he was being serious.
I thought he was being serious because I was like, well, it seems like the kind of thing he'd do.
Well, apparently no one else in the race thought he was being serious. But it's quite interesting. If you listen to the post-race interview of him, he was like, yeah, I said it, and I just decided to go at that point because it was really like muddy and no one could really see. And he was like, it just so happened it was that 81k to go point. And now I did not used to like Pogacar. I'm going to put my hands up. I did not like him. But when he was winning the Tour de France, I did not like him. And it's not because I don't respect him as an incredibly talented bike rider. I just I couldn't warm to him.
Couldn't find it compelling.
Yeah. And over the last couple of years, and I think him losing the Tour de France actually has really helped for me personally. I like him quite a lot now. I like that he comes across as incredibly humble.
Mm.
And I think maybe early on I mistook that humility in him for arrogance. And in contrast, like at the end of Milan San Remo at the weekend, like the first thing he does is he like puts his hand on Michael Matthews' back. He's like consolidating him because he didn't win. And then you see like all the and like you see the photos where he's with Jesper Philipsen and Michael Matthews, and he's genuinely happy to be on the podium with them. He's like, I've come third, but he genuinely looks happy. Like he won't be remembered necessarily for what he's won. He'll be remembered for his personality, I think.
He's kind of got a bit of a saga about him. Bit of a personality, also a monster.
Yeah, and like we need more of that in the sport. It's like in Milan San Remo. I don't know if you saw the clip of him riding along, eating some like food, and he's sitting there and he's like rubbing his tummy while he's eating this bar, and then he's doing the whole hand gesture and everything. And I'm like, this is great. This is brilliant. And
need more of that.
We need more of that. And I can't I can't think of what stage race is on at the moment that started today, and I don't know if you've seen it. But he didn't win the
Vuelta Catalunya.
Yeah, but the fact that he crosses the line and the Israel Premier Tech rider won, and the first thing he does, he looks at him and gives him a thumbs up. Like it's really nice to see, and all this, Lance Armstrong going, "Oh, we all used to hate each other back in my day, but back in your day, everyone used to be on a lot of drugs." So
and you used to be like the fucking kingpin of it.
yeah, exactly.
What about when you bullied Simeone? What about that part?
Yeah,
I forgot about that bit.
So it's good. It's good for the sport. Excuse me. It's good for the sport and I think the sport has matured in a way that people are respecting each other. There's respect, and like. Cycling's really small, right? Like these pro riders at the top level, men's and women's, they train together. They all live a lot of them live quite close to each other in certain parts of the world, right? They very often train together, different teams, but they train together. Like you regularly see Michael Matthews, Pogacar, Mohoric out riding together, for example. Geraint Thomas and Luke Rowe doing a lot of riding together. You regularly see this, right? Of course, they are genuinely mates. They ride together a lot. They race together a lot. They train together a lot. They live in each other. Like there's a social aspect. So you maybe you haven't won it, but you're still going to be happy that your mate won. It doesn't matter if you're on a different team. And I think that seeing more of that is good for the sport. And we're seeing it in the men's and women's side. Like ultimately, it's good for the sport seeing that. And yeah, Pogacar was. I put my hands up. I didn't like him. I really didn't like him. And now I really like him. He's probably one of my favourite riders now, which is to go from bottom to top it's a big thing, right? And it is purely because of how he comes across, like in his interviews and the way he is with fans and with other riders. And like what was really nice at Strada Bianchi was that when he crossed the finish line. I don't think it really came across on the TV coverage, but when he crossed the finish line, my God, he genuinely looked shocked. Like it was a genuine, like, I don't know how this has happened. I can't quite believe it. And I don't think that kind of comes across in the same way on TV. But when you're there in person, you kind of can feel it, and you can feel that as he was coming down to the finish, he was like, fuck me, this is probably the best ride I've ever done in my career, maybe will be for all time. And that was really cool to witness that. And then, he holds the bike up in the air and then turns around and holds up and sort of says thank you to everyone watching. It was just really nice to see. It was also cool seeing, was nice to see Pidcock coming in at fourth. Like, of course, he's British. I'm obviously going to be a fan of Pidcock, and especially because at the start of the race, he sort of was like, "I'm not feeling good." To still come away with fourth is amazing.
Pretty mega.
And then the women's race was just, and you couldn't. I mean, everyone thought Kopecky was probably the favourite, right? But you couldn't really pick a.
It's between her and Demi, right? Because the SD Works is just too good.
Yeah, but it was nice seeing Longa Borghini up there. Like, it was nice seeing, Voss was up there until the end. Rihanna Marcus was up there towards the end. Sylvia Persico, who is a legend as well. Like, I really like her as a racer because she rides with her soul and her heart. Like, she proper goes for it.
Like Cassia Niewiadoma.
Like Cassia as well.
She
like,
fucking nuked it. I was like, stop doing this. Like, she hasn't won a race apart from like the gravel one in like 3 years. And I don't understand how.
I love Cassia, but I think she's a very emotional rider as well. I think
She goes too hard when she doesn't need to.
I just think she rides on the front loads. That's her downfall, right? And maybe the Canyon SRAM team isn't as strong overall as, say, Little Trek or SD Works. Like, maybe she hasn't got the same level of support, but Neve Bradbury is racing very well at the moment. So I don't know, like, maybe she doesn't have quite the same level of support as some of the other riders and some of the other teams, but we know how good she is.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing race to see live. And then to the Sportive, I could take it or leave it, if I'm honest. I could take it or leave it. It was. I think if you wanted to do that, go and do it with a bunch of mates away from the Sportive. That would be my personal thing.
That's what Miles told me on last Monday.
Yeah, because like it was dangerous. It was really dangerous. 7,000 people in, setting off within, I don't know, an hour of each other, and because in Italy, right, a Sportif is an amateur race. They treat it as an amateur race very often. So you've got people. There's a prize. There's first place, second place, third place. There's different age categories and stuff for it, right? So there's people that are racing these Sportives when there's also at the same time people who are there to do it as a challenge. Like, the contrast in experience levels are so extreme. So you might have people ducking and diving and weaving between riders who are not confident with that kind of person riding in that proximity to them, and crashes happen. Like, both when Miles and I were riding together, I think we saw probably 3 or 4 crashes that looked pretty serious, and we probably saw 4 or 5 ambulances on the route. So, we quite early on, the first sort of 20k was carnage, and we quite early on said, like, right, let's just stay and hug the curve on the right-hand side of the road, because all the fast riders were going on the left. The faster riders generally were going to the left-hand side. So we were like, we'll hug the curve on the right side, and we'll overtake people as and when we need to. And we had people undertaking us, trying to go in between us, all this kind of stuff. And we just had to laugh about it in the end, because we were like, what the fuck is going on? But it kind of like calmed down by the time we got to the first gravel sector. It sort of calmed down a bit, and then it just would like go through ebbs and phases of being carnage and then being actually really enjoyable. But like, as far as I'm aware, all of the roads are open roads. Like, if I was to go back to Siena, I'd go and ride it with a bunch of mates, and I think it'd be an amazing like route to ride. It'd be incredible. It's absolutely beautiful. And both Miles and I did it on gravel bikes. For me, it was because I just got a new gravel bike and I wanted to ride it. That was fundamentally my choice. But I feel like we had the correct bike for it, on the basis of like the ground was a bit damp at points and it was a bit slippy. If it was dry, 100% road bike should be fine on a road bike. But because it was a bit wet, a gravel bike felt more comfortable and more confidence giving on the corners and stuff. I had a friend out there, a guy called Neil, who he's part of Kingston Wheelers. He's the guy that designs the Kingston Wheelers kit. And we used to work together at a design firm. He's a graphic designer. And I bumped into him at the third food stop. I haven't seen him in like quite a long time. And I just saw him. I recognized him straight away. He's like a ginger beard, ginger hair, quite like in Kingston Wheelers kit, right? So like it's quite obvious. Saw him, just went up and gave him a massive hug. And I was like, "You all right, mate?" And he was like, I've had, he just was like, mate, I've had a nightmare. And I was like, go on, what's happened? And he was on a Cannondale System 6, one of the Rafa paint job ones. I was like, go on, what's happened? And he was like, well, I hit a pothole, I punctured, I didn't have a long enough valve because he was riding like 60 mil rims. He's like, I just didn't have a long enough valve. So I walked for an hour back on myself to this food stop, basically, to try and or I walked back for an hour to a neutral service, like Shimano neutral service bit, to try and get a inner tube with a long enough valve. They didn't have one. So I carried on walking back to this food stop, which is probably another half an hour away from where he was, on foot, in cleats, road cleats as well. And he said, like, a guy saw him walking back and luckily had an inner tube that was long enough. And he's like, for some reason, I didn't have any valve extenders. I didn't bother checking the inner tube length, all this kind of stuff. And then, anyway, he got his tyre pump back up and everything, and he was off again. And I texted him afterwards, being like, oh, mate, it's good to see you. I haven't seen you in a long time. It's really nice to see you. And he was like, he then was like, yeah, my day got worse. And I was like, go on. Why did it get worse? And he's like, well, when I got home, he's like, my bike was feeling a bit weird while doing the rest of the route. But I got home and I took the seat post out, and the seat post had a massive crack down it.
Oh.
And I was like, okay, you could say it got worse, or you could say you did Strada Bianchi properly, you know. So, like, it is hard on the bikes, 100%. But, like, I would say that if you're going to do it, just go out there and, like, spend a week around the area and enjoy the food, the culture, and the riding, because the riding's incredible.
So, Chris, this year you're going to be doing 3 ultras in 3 months. I guess we should start with, is it Badlands? Is that how you pronounce
Badlands.
it? Badlands.
Badlands. You can call it whatever you want. Badlands, good lands, worse lands. It was called. It was. They actually called it. They changed the name of it last year to Worse Lands because it was supposed. It was worse. Not that wasn't the public naming of it, but when you go to do when you go and do these ultras, you have to sit and do like a presentation talking about the route and everything like that. And David, the organizer, just changed it to Worse Lands because so Badlands is an ultra gravel race across the deserts in the south of Spain. So you start in Granada, you travel up into the Garraf Desert, the Tabernas Desert, and then you basically then sort of snake yourself back along the coast, and then you finish inland again. It's about the route length changes every year, but it's between 750 and 900k, shall we say. I've done it 3 times. There's been 4 editions. I missed the first edition because it was during COVID times, and I didn't think it was right to travel, to be honest with you. So I did 2023, 2022, and 2021. And 2021 was still, I guess, kind of COVID times, but not to the same extent as 2020, right? And of the 3 editions, the 20... I said it to a few people, but it's got easier every time. And I don't know whether that's because I've done it 3 times or whether I personally think the route has got slightly easier each time. And I believe that the 2021 one was the hardest edition because the route was really savage and the temperatures were ridiculous. Like that area of Spain has been in a drought for like 30, 40 years. And which is why it's I think part of its beauty is the landscape that you're in, and that's caused by the situation they're in as well. But that first edition I did in 2021, the temperatures were like, mid 30s up, basically, to kind of like mid to high 30s. I think maybe at one point I saw like 40 degrees on the Garmin appear. And it was longer, and the route was a bit more rough and ready. But they've obviously refined it as the years have gone on. And then 2022, the route was fantastic. I just really enjoyed it. And then 2023, as I said, they changed the name to Worse Lands because they had rain, basically. It was the first time in a long time. And rain to us in the UK is like, yeah, cool, okay, rain. We don't think of it, right? But in that kind of region in Spain, when it rains, they get flash flooding. And now the flash flooding in the deserts is very, very dangerous. So they actually removed some of the desert sections because they had flash flooding and it would have been dangerous to ride in. So the route actually became shorter than the route became slightly shorter than the previous editions, but it ends up being more road. And I did it on a mountain bike, which was completely the wrong bike to do it on, to be honest with you, for last year. But I did it on that bike based on comfort from my broken wrists. But this year I'm doing it as a pair, which I've only ever done one ultra in a pair before, which was a Silk Road mountain race in 2019. Whatever year was the first edition of the Silk Road mountain race. I did that as a pair with Rob Quirk, also up there as one of the loveliest humans in the world. And it's his birthday tomorrow, which will mean nothing because this podcast will go out way after his birthday. But happy birthday, Rob! Anyway, so this will be the second time I've ever done an ultra in a pair, and I'm doing it with my mate Nick Vieri, who's the mechanic and the guy that runs Backyard Bike Shop in Newcastle. And basically, he's been hounding me to do this event as a pair with him for quite a while. And I just said, I hadn't really ridden with him that much. I didn't really know what he's like to ride with. And actually, we did Grinduro together last year, like rode the whole thing together. And we had a great time. And Nick used to be in the army. Like, he's got the right head for doing an ultra, in my opinion. And he wanted to do it with someone who's got experience and understands, and can kind of help him and guide him. And for me, like I probably get from on an ultra, I get way more from sharing that experience with someone, like even racing it solo, the interactions and meetings you have with people on the route and the conversations you have, they're the highlights for me. Those bits are they're the bits I really enjoy and I cherish and remember those moments. And because you build a connection with someone who comes from a completely different lifestyle, completely different part of the world, potentially a completely different language, and you're sort of speaking in broken whatever. And so doing it in a pair, really, for me, to do that with someone who's never done something like this that's really exciting. And it's very humbling that Nick wants to do that with me. It's very flattering for him to ask to want to do that. So yeah, we're doing that. It starts on the 1st of September, which is less than 6 months away now, actually.
Yeah.
I only know that because they sent an email out saying 6 months to go. So it's definitely that wasn't quick maths. But for me, I love the race itself because I love the ethos of the organisation and the organisers. Now, there's a lot of ultras out there, right? There's loads of different organisers. There's loads of different events. But what David and his team have done so well is they do really try and focus on the impact of the race and also bring in the race to a part of Spain that is not a wealthy part of Spain, that's not a particularly touristy part of Spain. And a lot of what happens from what he explained to me is, in these small villages in the deserts in Spain, the villages are slowly effectively dying out because all the young people are moving to the coast or to Madrid, Barcelona, to the coast where or the big cities where there's better jobs, better employment options. So there's fewer and fewer people living in these cities. And what's happened with Badlands over the years is you go through these towns and small villages and stuff. And the first year in 2021 that I did it, the locals were like, shit me, there's loads of freaking weird people in Lycra and weird looking bikes with loads of bags on them. Like, they were really freaked out by it. And every year you see them proper getting behind it, like to the point that you'd see there's one bar. It's in the Garrafe Desert, like quite north of the route. I can't remember the town name, unfortunately, but there's a bar in this town. The first year I went there, they had they were giving out pizza slices to people, like to give as food, effectively. They were just a bit overwhelmed by it. And then the next year, they had a screen up in the bar with the live tracking on.
Oh, nice!
And they had a whole table full of nuts and crisps and sweets that you could help yourself to. And then they did a deal which was like a bocadillo and a drink, like a bottle of water, like a litre or 2 litre bottle of water, and a bocadillo for €4. A bocadillo is a sandwich for €4. And then this year they upped it again. Like, they put bunting down the streets, and they had like signs up that the kids had drawn, and they had like bikes and stuff on the side that they'd like decorated, as well as having the live tracking. And that's amazing to see and to be part of. And every year that I've done the race, the woman that runs the bar remembers me. So like that's
community.
It's really lovely. And the route itself is forcing you to go through parts of Spain that you wouldn't normally think of going through, which is great. It's fantastic. And side note to that, they understand that for a lot of people doing ultras, people are taking time out of their day jobs and their work, their family, to go there, and they're limited with how much time they have spare, right? So that's why people are flying. Everyone, if they could, would get a train or cycle to the start of a race, but it's the time aspect of it, right? And so what Badlands do is, part of your entry fee, you pay a carbon offset for your travel, for your flying. And that, to me, is a good solution to understanding for people who can't travel via other forms of transport because they don't have the time. It allows that flexibility to it. And I really like that, because certain events are saying you can't start this event unless you come here. You have to have traveled by train or by your own steam. You can't have driven to the start. You can't have flown to the start.
Really?
And I really understand that. I understand their stance and their reasoning for it, but it just isn't feasible for so many people. If you're doing a day, like a 9-to-5 job, you just don't have the time off work, right? You can't have that time off work, especially if you've got a family and stuff. So I like how Badlands and David have kind of done it. I think it's a very conscious of the situation, because that race has become a very it's really hard to get a place in, and it's become a very it's one that people want to do and to tick off. I would say it's one that people would like to have on their list. It's definitely on a lot of ultra, or a lot of cyclists' bucket list, let alone ultra cyclists. And I've been lucky to do it 3 times, and the first time I did it, I got an entry. I was in the ballot like everyone else, and I got lucky. The second time I did it, one of my sponsors gifted me an entry. That was also, I'm very lucky to be in that situation, that Strava offered me an entry for free. And then last year, I was in the ballot again. And admittedly, maybe I got lucky because David knew who I was, but it was the same thing. Like, I paid for the entry, I entered like anyone else would. And then for next year, David actually very openly told me, if you do it as a pair, you're more likely to get a place. So I was like, okay, I can do it as a pair then. So that's my secret tip to anyone that wants to do Badlands: to
find a friend.
Find a friend. I'm excited about it. I really enjoy that race, and I enjoy it because I've never properly raced it. There's always been something that's happened, and like, you're never going to have perfect timing for stuff, but there's always ended up being something. And last year, it was recovering from 2 broken wrists, recovering from pneumonia. Like, you're just not going to be in good form really for that. The year before, what happened the year before now? Something happened the year before. I can't remember what, but something happened the year before. There's always been something in the lead up to these events that's caused, or with Badlands anyway, that's caused something. I remember the first year I did it, I'd had a knee injury, which was related to the rugby injury that I spoke about previously. So there's always been a little something which has caused an issue. So, but I'm fine with that, because I have still finished them, and in my opinion, in a lot of ultra races, the aim should always be to have fun. And if it gets to a point where it's not fun, there's an element of, it's never always going to be fun. That's fine.
Yeah.
But if it gets to a point that it's really not fun, there's no harm in scratching. Like, I actually think scratching from an ultra is good for a lot of people, because it forces you not to put yourself in a really, really big hole, and really doing some serious damage to yourself. Scratching is a good thing, and I think there was this bravado about it several years ago of being where, like, you don't scratch, you harden up and all this. And I which I think is bullshit, to be honest with you. But I do think that the mentality is changing, where people are kind of understanding that actually there's no harm in pulling out of these things, because you can't be on your A game all the time, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter who you are. And if something's not right with your body, don't risk it. Like,
is scratching quitting?
Yeah, scratching is quitting.
Yeah.
I don't know why it was called scratching. I think it was called scratching because it was that you'd have your name scratched out.
Yeah,
yeah.
That's what it is. Having your name scratched out. Yeah, I mean, just because I think it comes from checkpoint challenges.
Yeah.
So they'd have your names printed out and you'd scratch yours out, and I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah. But for me, like, I will at some point, I will go to that race and be like, I'm here to race this and I'm here to do well. But when that'll be, I don't know. Some point in the future, at some point. I know it might turn out that I say to Nick when we get to the start line in September, which he will hate me for. I was like, dude, we're going to try and win this, mate, in the pairs category.
Mate, speaking of races, I know you haven't disclosed it yet, but about National 100.
Hang on, Cam. We still got 2 more ultras to talk about.
Hang on, we got 2 more ultras. Cut that shit out. NJ, you go.
We've got to talk about the goat. We've got to talk about the Andes, and I'm keeping this in.
It's also 24. It's also 24, not 100.
Because that's the speed I do it at.
So the goat is a new ultra. Am I right, Chris?
Yeah, the goat. I had basically the goat or the goats. I'm correcting myself because I have now gone to a different tab on my laptop to see what the name of it is. The goats is a 700. I think it's just short of 800 kilometer ultra in Portugal. It's the second year of doing it. It kind of like first appeared on my radar, I think, like early this year. I think because Tailfin, which is one of my sponsors, they're supporting it, and I was like, oh, okay, that looks kind of cool. And I always end up having a busy end of the year, or just for some reason. Like last year, I did 2 ultras in a month and a bit, which was too much, to be honest with you. It's too close. But this one, Tailfin are sponsoring, and they kindly offered me entry into that one. So I don't know a lot about it, which is why it excites me, because I've always been someone that likes first editions of events, and this isn't the first edition. This is the second one, but from everything I've been told, having talking to the organisers, is the second editions are going to be drastically different to the first one. The appeal.
Where in Portugal is it?
Let me just check the tab. In the middle. It's to be fair, it is pretty much in the middle of Portugal, and it looks like the first checkpoint is like on the Spain-Portugal border. I'm trying to find like a big city that I know the name of, and I won't butcher the name of it effectively.
I don't think you'll find one.
I don't think I'll find one.
It's either Porto or Lisbon, or the rest are all small towns, right?
It's kind of in the middle of Porto and Lisbon.
Okay.
And then goes towards the Spanish border and then loops back round towards the coast and then back on itself. So it is a complete circle loop. But this is based on last year's route, so it could change this year. They haven't disclosed the route yet. But I just like the sound of it. They seem like from what my conversations with the organizer, like they seem like good people, and I know Tailfin has been like a sponsor for me since 2019, and they are friends. They really are friends at that brand, and I genuinely think they make the best bikepacking equipment available, and it's because they spend so much time developing and researching and creating the products, right? And the guy that's the head of marketing at Tailfin, like he's now a very, very good friend of mine, and he lives near my partner's dad, and whenever we go and see my partner's dad, we try and meet up and hang out and go bike riding and stuff. Now, I messaged him being like, "Oh, I see you're like involved with this race," and he was like, "Yeah, it looks really good, doesn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah, it does." And he was like, "Are you thinking about it?" And I was like, "I am actually. Like, I think it'd be quite a nice one to do." And he was like, oh, "We can help out. We can help out." And race entries are expensive, and I'm lucky that I can get some of them covered. It does help. Because some of these races you're talking 200, 300 pounds to enter. Like it gets expensive if you're doing 3 or 4 a year, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Especially if you're going to the Andes.
yeah, God, I don't even want to think about the cost of that one yet, to be honest with you. It's quite scary. But yeah, the goat should be a good one. I'm quite looking forward to that. So that's September and October ticked off, and then the Andes, the race is called Across Andes, and I think you kind of get the gist of what is going to happen on that one.
That sounds hard, man. That sounds very steep.
Well, I've got a lot. The race has been going. I think that they've done 3 editions now, 2 or 3 editions now, and a few of my friends have done the previous editions. One of my mates, Alvin, who is out in LA, is another one of the nicest people in the world. And my mate Cynthia, they've both done them, and another friend Ulrich has done them, and everyone that has done the Across Andes event has said the highlights of it is the scenery is incredible, but the people are incredible.
I've heard about this. So I think I heard an interview with Matt Stevens, and he was saying that they were cycling through Colombia or something, and one of them needed to go to the toilet, and their guide apparently was like, "Oh, there's no public toilets around here. Just knock on that person's door and they'll let you in." And he said he knocked on someone's door, and they were just like, "In you come." And then they had a coffee in this person's house, and they were like, "Right, cool, see you later." Like the people, just really, really lovely people.
So that's as I already sort of alluded to when I've spoken about Badlands and previously, I guess when talking about like ultra cycling and the experiences in Romania, like those interactions with people are the things I really enjoy. So that's a big reason for wanting to do that one. I was going to do it last year, but like financially I couldn't really make it work, and just time wise I couldn't really make it work, and I was pretty burnt out at the end of last year. So I chose to postpone my entry by a year, which was the organisers were very kind to allow me to do that. Nice. And there's something I really would love to explore more of South America. I've not really. I've been to Mexico once. I was going to say bike packed, but it wasn't bike packing. It was like just traveling. Just bike packing is my automatic thing that I think of when I'm riding. I was like traveling around Mexico a long time ago now with a couple of friends, and Mexico is an amazing place as well. I absolutely loved it, but I really would love to, do some riding around Brazil, Chile, Colombia. I'd love to see those countries. And generally the gist I've heard from several people is like, yes, it's expensive to get there, but once you're there, it's okay. And it's worth it for I always wonder every year is like how many I feel like in our lifetime, I would perceive we're maybe a similar kind of age. You don't have to answer that if you don't want to, but I believe in our lifetime, like there's probably going to be a point where we maybe won't be able to travel so much. So I feel like I'm very conscious of my carbon footprint, but at the same time, there's a pressure with what I do that people love the exploration and stuff like that. So it's always weighing up the balance and kind of deciding whether it's the right and the wrong thing to do. And it's why I try and do quite a lot of stuff that is still UK and Europe centric. But every now and then, I think it is important to go and see and explore a different culture and a different lifestyle. I think it helps you grow as a person. And so South America is one that I'm really keen to see and to kind of explore. And we'll start it in the Andes, which what more could you want? It's probably going to be one of the most incredible landscapes in the world.
100%. So is this now my time to talk about this?
It is.
Why didn't you talk about your unreleased plans for the National 24, which I wrote down? Thank you very much.
So anyone that has, I think, followed me for a long time, I don't know how many people know that far back, but like time trialing was always the thing I was quite good at. Always has been. I don't really know why, but specifically, the longer the time trial, the better. Like I kind of would come good when they were over 50 miles. So 50 mile, 100 mile, 12 hour, 24 hour. In the UK, the time trialing, scene is 10 mile, 25 mile, 50 mile, 100 mile, 12 hour, 24 hour. And it's all run by CTT, which is a separate organization from British Cycling, which basically runs time trialing and hill climbs. Okay. Now, the National 24 is a weird, magical, confusing 24 hours of bike riding where you're basically ride as hard as you can for 24 hours. And it takes place in Wrexham, of all places, and it is on open roads. But I did this event in 2019, 2018, and 2017. Mm-hmm. Now, 2017, the first year I did it, I think I went into it a bit. First of all, I went into it a little bit arrogant, thinking I was going to do quite well, and I absolutely blew up. And I
got humbled.
and I made myself very, very ill. And I got the first time I got pneumonia. I've had it twice now because I had it last year as well. It's really easy to get it again, but you've caught it, unfortunately.
Okay.
And then that pneumonia led on to shingles, which is horrible. Yep. And I think shingles sounds like a character from Sesame Street or something, right? It's definitely not a nice character.
We had it at school. It went round. I was at a boarding school where, a military one, where we're all cramped in together. It went round there. Horrible.
Yes, horrible.
Awful. It's like chickenpox, but horrible.
It's like chickenpox, but very, very painful because it is effectively the same strain as chickenpox, but it attacks your nervous system. Yeah, well, nervous system. So it attacks your nerves. So you get that like electric shock tingling all the time. And then it affects your immune system. And, it's like 3 to 6 months proper recovery from that. So 2017, I really fucked up, basically. And so I went back in 2018 and with a good plan, a good strategy, and did quite well. And I think I came 7th, I think. Mm-hmm. And then I went back in 2019, basically, wanting to go better than that and with a better strategy, a better plan. And the start list of riders in 2019 was considerably stronger as well. And I did better, went further, everything was good. And I was really pleased with myself. And then I didn't go back again. And I don't really know why. Well, I do know why, because it really, really hurt. So I didn't go back I haven't been back since. And now it's like a scab, right? Like, like you've got a scab and you want to pick it. And you shouldn't pick that scab, right? Everyone knows that feeling, right? You've got a scab and you're like, I want to pick it.
Sounds to get itchy.
Yeah. That's what the National 24 is to me. It's a scab. Like, I know it's going to hurt. I really know it's going to hurt. And I know it's going to be a tough 24 hours, but I know how to race it probably as well as the best in that race. Mm-hmm. If not better, because of having done ultras as well. Like, I feel like that's a great experience grower. That's, I kind of, after the 2019 National 24, I've only really been doing ultras and then the charity projects. And I think that's, in those ultras, you could be riding for 36 hours. Like you could be going way beyond 24-hour point. And because you need to, because of the situation you're in. A lot has happened since I last did it effectively. And I got a shiny new time trial bike. And I thought, fuck it, let's go and do it again. That's pretty simple, to be honest.
So I've got a question before we head to section 3. How do you do a route for National 24?
Because it is interesting how it's done.
Okay.
So the route, the National 24 is set. The routes are set. you have
Right.
4 different routes. And the National 24 is run by a club called Mersey Roads. Shout out to them because they are an amazing, very old school British club, but they're like one of those historical clubs in the UK cycling scene that makes great cakes, and they're putting on events like this, which unfortunately, 24-hour racing, I feel is dying out a bit in cycling in general. But we have a national championship in it, and it's important to showcase that, in my opinion. So what they do is they have an amazing group of volunteers that help put on this event, and you have 4 different circuits on the National 24. You have a start point, which is like a village hall, which you then ride down to the main hub, which is a roundabout. And now from this hub, there is 3 different circuits that come off this. 2 of them are basically out and backs. So like you ride out to like a roundabout and then another roundabout and then back. It's like A roads, out and backs.
Mm-hmm.
The 3rd circuit is effectively a circle that kind of goes down some, they're not country lanes, but some sort of narrower roads, not busy A roads, and then joins back on to one of the out and backs. Now, how they do this, I don't truly understand, but the organisers, they will, as you're racing, they will tell you, they will direct you onto the appropriate circuit that you should be on. For as far as I've got to do, I've just got to pedal a bike and eat, right? Mm-hmm. These people are they're looking at the times for the first rider off all the way down to the last rider off, and dictating that all the riders should be on this particular circuit in these particular hours of the day.
Right.
And then they calculate your distance based on how many laps you've done on that circuit over those hours of the day. So say you're on the first circuit and you've done 10 laps, they will know that 10 laps is X amount of miles.
Oh, I understand what they do. They just do a back calculation of speed and time.
Yeah,
speed and
exactly.
time equals distance. So it's just the reverse of what you think it is. And then they'll stop you at wherever you are, or you kind of put your hand up and you stop your thing, and then they can dictate where you are on the map and say you did, I don't know, X 500 miles, 0.1, because you're here. And that's how they then decide who went the furthest, essentially.
Yeah, so they do it for each of the circuits, and you might change circuits 4 times over the course of the event. And then generally speaking, the last, I think it's 2 hours, you ride back towards where the start line is. And at the start line, there's the finishers circuit, which is I think it may be 10-mile circuit. It's a much smaller circuit, and it's a square. And on that circuit, basically every rider will be on that circuit for the last few hours. And on that circuit, on every corner on this square is a marshal. And that marshal is taking your time every single time you pass them. And then say you started at 1 o'clock, when you get to 1 o'clock the next day, your time will be calculated between the 2 marshals, basically. And it's surprisingly quite accurate however they do it, because I've looked at my Garmin file and what was my final distance, and then seen what has gone on to CTT, and I'm like, yeah, that's pretty much spot on. I don't know how they do it, but they do it, and they seem to do a great job of it. So massive shout out to Mersey Roads for somehow understanding mathematics better than I will ever know in my life.
Well, maybe we take that and head to section 3 with the Q&A with Chris. Thank you.
Wait, welcome back, everyone. Chris, we're into the Q&A. This is as quick or as long as you want the answers to be. So, what do you prefer, Richmond Park or Regent's Park?
Richmond, on the basis that I rode Regent's Park every day for 3.5 months, doing 100+ kilometers on it. Richmond's got more variety, right? It's a bit more exciting. Admittedly, it's crap when the park is open, but I think when I lived in London, I don't live in London anymore. I moved out of London 3 years ago now. Shit, it is just about 3 years ago now. I think it's actually 3 years ago last week. So that's happy London out of bursary to me. One of my some of my favorite rides in London were getting up really early before sunrise, riding to Roehampton Gate, and going and doing a couple of laps around with my mates as the sun was coming up, and then going to work. So Richmond Park, hands down. When it's closed.
So we've talked about your love of RVV, but we've also talked about some of the climbing and the ultra events you've done. Cobbles or mountains, be it watching or cycling? Where are you on that?
Watching cobbles, riding mountains. Because I think the monuments and the Spring Classic races are the best races to watch in terms of atmosphere. I just think that there's something really exciting about watching them, especially if you're there in person. But I love watching them on TV as well, right? And Ronde van Vlaanderen or Pavé are like two of my favorites. But like, to be honest, I could watch any of the smaller spring races and still love them. But for me, there's personally riding them. I've got 2 broken wrists, right? It really fucking hurts riding on cobbles. I'm not gonna beat around the bush there. But the mountains, like, I did a trenching challenge on Box Hill. Now that is not a mountain. I can confirm that. And I did the 7 Everest challenge in 2021, and like there's a lot of elevation and climbing in those kind of challenges. A trenching challenge, for anyone that doesn't know, because it might be one that people don't know, is climbing and descending what would be the depth of the Mariana Trench. So it's 11,034 meters. Doing that on Box Hill means you have to do it like 93 times.
No.
Don't do it ever, anyone. It's a stupid idea. But I'm not the best climber in the world. Like, I never will be, and I'm absolutely fine with that. But there's something so amazing about cycling through the mountains, and I think it's incredibly grounding because you actually realize how small you are, and that's why I would choose to cycle in the mountains as opposed to ride on cobbles.
Do you have a favorite climb at all?
Oh, that's a great question. God, it's a hard one to choose. I really liked Stelvio when I did Stelvio a long time ago, because I think it's pretty epic. But the Transfiguration in Romania is probably a real highlight for me because it was the first mountain pass I'd ever done. Another one of a not well-known climb that I was really blown away by is called Kegati Pass, which is in Kyrgyzstan.
Okay.
And because it's a gravel climb, but I think I can't remember exactly what the altitude that it goes to, but the altitude's insane. And I did that Silk Road mountain race with Rob Quirk, and that's your first. Literally, you start in Bishkek, the capital, and you ride up for that edition to Kegati, and you go. The scenery just changes from being like a forest to then starting to look quite exposed to then basically just being like grey rock, and then you go through this tiny little like gap in the mountain range, and that's where you start descending. And like I took this photo of Rob when both of us were kind of struggling with the altitude, like it was significant altitude, and we we're both struggling a bit with it. And Rob was saying that his head was spinning, and I just took this photo of him like leaning over on his bikes, and we were just looking around, and I remember thinking, I feel like an ant. Like that's the one time I've really felt like an ant. So mountains are just, as I say, they're very grounding. They make you realize how small we are, which I think is quite important, actually.
Well, speaking of important things, white bib shorts. We spoke a little bit earlier about it, and we're recording this in the 18th of March. So there's already been a few white bib sightings on the world tour, on the world stage, you could say. Chris, where do you sit with the white bib shorts? Can we see you in them?
You will never see me in white bib shorts, but I think they basically because I don't think I could pull them off, and I don't think I have a good enough tan. But my God, they look great on Van der Poel and Luke Plapp. It looks brilliant. If you are a world champion or a national champion, fucking do it. Like, why not? Why not? You're the best in the world, or the best in your country, or the best in Europe. You know, the problem with white bib shorts, right, is practicality. Yeah, they're really hard to keep clean. Like, but if you are the best in the world, you're going to have a lot of pairs of white bib shorts, and you're going to have someone else that's going to wash that kit for you, right? Do it. Like, just why not? I think it looks so cool on the right person, and the right person is Van der Poel and Luke Plapp, because he's wearing them with the Australian national champs.
Yeah, he's smashing them at the moment.
But he looks great in them, and I like the fact that he did white bib shorts with a leader's jersey as well. I dig that.
That is good.
Yeah,
you don't see that often.
Yeah, you don't see that often. I as I say, I think it was Adam Blythe when he was British national champ. He did white bibs, white jersey, and it just looked cool. It looked so good. Bradley Wiggins did it when he was the world time trial champion. White bibs, white jersey.
Oh, I've seen that. That photo's great. Yeah.
And it looks so good. Like, man, if you're the pinnacle of cycling, why the fuck not? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're the best in the world. Like, what better way to stand out? I mean, the rainbow jersey stands out great as it is, right? But, like, fuck it, go full ham. Why not?
Decent.
That is. There we go. It's settled. Everyone has to get world class and become white bib enthusiasts.
The one thing I will say, to go on to that subject as well, because I mentioned about national champs jerseys. If you're a national champ and your team does not do a national champs jersey justice, leave the team.
Oh, yeah, I tend to agree with you there.
Because, like, FDJ, they do the best national champs jerseys in the peloton because it's a full jersey. There's minimal sponsors on it, and
they take all the sponsors off.
It's so good. It looks so good. On contrast, UAE, you can't even tell who the national champs are. It's terrible.
And Astana as well.
Astana, they've got better. When Cavendish was British national champ, it was okay. But it shouldn't have had that blue fade thing going on the bottom of it. Just have the fucking white jersey with the stripes in it.
I think Ineos do a good job with the national champs jerseys as well. They kind of have got it figured out. They've kind of like, I think it's because they're a one sponsor. Well, they not really. All they've got on their jerseys what? Ineos and Pinarello. That's all they've got on their jerseys. So it's like, it looks really clean.
That's it. It needs to be a jersey which has minimal logos on it, or just do what FDJ do and just don't do logos. I mean, Little Trek have done okay with it.
The American one, that Little Trek have, was quite good.
Yeah, but it still looks a bit weird because, like, if you've got, I think they've got the Luxembourg national champs, haven't they? And then you just got a massive Lidl logo like on your chest, and like even if you've gone full stripes for it, and then you've got this huge Lidl logo. I get it. Like, I understand for the sponsors, being on the national champs jersey is a big thing, but there's certain things in cycling that shouldn't be fucked with, and one of them is a national champs jersey. And I know that's probably a controversial thing to say, but like, if you are the best in the world, or the best of your nation, it needs to be celebrated. And one way to celebrate that for that 1 year is to go full in like FDJ do on the national champs jersey. I think they even did like, I can't remember what year it was. It might have been when Arnaud Demar was like French national champ, and he had a national champ skin suit. So the whole, like, the tricolour was done for the whole skin suit. I'm here for that. I think he had blue, white, red bibs.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Love it. So that is celebrating someone's achievement properly, which is why you should wear white bib shorts.
Exactly. On another important topic, it's starting to get a bit warmer now. You'll go out with leg warmers on. You'll take them off later on when it gets a bit hotter. But is the sock under the leg warmer or over the leg warmer, Chris?
Depends on the colour of the sock.
I'm thinking you're doing what?
Sorry, there's white socks only, isn't there?
White. If I'm wearing white shoes, I'm wearing white socks. If I'm wearing black shoes, I'm wearing black socks. Because my black shoes are my off-road shoes generally. Because white shoes off-road is, I'm not Tom Pidcock. It's not practical. So if I am going to put, I probably am generally a socks under leg warmers. And that is purely for the reason that if I have to take them off, and I will take them off while riding, because if I ride on my own, I don't often stop. I don't really do stopping. I don't stop at cafes. I just eat on the go, do everything on the go. And very much about like when I'm on my own training is about, okay, I'm training for X amount of hours. There's minimal stoppage time. And I think that was sort of drilled into me for like, we're doing 24-hour races in the past. So I'll be taking that leg warmer off while I'm riding, and if the sock is over the leg warmer, it's another thing to deal with when you're trying to take the leg warmer off. So sock under the leg warmer because it's easier.
That is the correct answer, in my eyes. In Cam's eyes, it's the other way around.
In all honesty, there's no wrong or right answer to it, but everyone has an opinion on it, which is great.
It's so small, but it matters so much to me. Do you have any do's or don'ts on group rides?
Yeah, don't be a bellend.
Fair.
Easy.
No dickhead policy.
Yeah, no dickhead.
Easy.
No, and the other one is no willy waggling. I hate it. Yeah. And what I mean by willy waggling is when you get people who are like just riding like, well, yeah, it's back to no dickhead policy, right? Don't ride like a bellend. No willy waggling. Ride sensibly.
It's so central.
Yeah, like don't cause crashes or anything like that. Like I don't like it when you see. I'm very conscious of being on group rides with people I don't know, and I often will ride at the back of the group because I don't know the people I'm riding with, so I don't necessarily. It's not that I don't. Well, yeah, I don't trust them because I don't know them. I don't know how they ride, and so I always will ride a little bit off the back because for my own safety more than anything. Because like part of my job is riding a bike. If I can't ride a bike, I can't work. Therefore, I can't earn money. So if I have a stupid crash, I'm not going to be able to pay the bills effectively, right? So my big thing is just don't be a dick. And my big thing to do is to just talk to people, like wave, say hi, like fucking hell, like be sociable. Don't be like standoffy. Like there's lots of people out there riding bikes who find it quite intimidating, you know, seeing a large group of people riding past them really fast. Just fucking say hi. Like, being polite and having manners goes a really long way, and it could be something that causes someone to fall in love with a sport that we're all very lucky to do and very privileged to be part of. It could cause someone to fall in love with it, and at the same time, being a dickhead can cause someone to just turn away from it, right? So just be nice. Goes a long way. Manners go a really long way, and I think, I don't know why, but like in the UK, there's this thing in certain parts of the UK, right? There's this thing about not being polite on a bike. I don't know why. I don't get it. Like where I live in the peaks, you see another rider, you say hi, you have a chat for 5 minutes. You know, maybe not 5 minutes, but you always say, "Oh, you're right. How you doing? Where you going?" All that kind of stuff. There's certain places where that just doesn't happen, but manners go a long way, right? And in all parts of life, and ultimately, we all want more people riding bikes. So being nice and encouraging and welcoming to someone into the sport, doesn't matter how long they've been involved in it or whatever, is going to do good ultimately. And that's what we all want. No more bellends.
Agree with that. Are you, when you're going out on these long rides, what are you putting in your back pocket?
I regularly cycle with a frame bag or a top tube bag, which may be something people don't like, but I like it because it gives me additional place to put snacks. In my back pockets, I will normally have my phone, like a little wallet, which will just have in there. I always have bank cards. I always have some cash because cash is king in some places. It will have in it valve extenders, and it will have I have a dog tag, which I don't often wear, but has like my contact details and stuff is in that little wallet, just in case. And then my other pocket will basically be full of a variety of foods, which could be stuff from Sturka, it could be Haribo, it could be roast potatoes, it could be a jam sandwich, it could be pretty much anything and anything under the sun that I kind of fancy. But I'm a big believer that having real food is always the first thing that you should be doing when you're riding. Like, it's the best thing to have is proper food, and then rely on the space food, which when I say space food, I mean, gels, all that kind of stuff. Rely on that a bit later on into the rides when you don't want real food anymore. So my pockets are normally very loaded with food, to be honest with you. And then I often wear cargo bibs because it means you can carry more food.
Fair. Well, maybe our last question, because we already kind of covered off cycling dislikes, which is don't be a dickhead and be good to other people. So if you ever were to stop or you're with a group, what would your cycling coffee order be? And then follow up, what's your favourite coffee shop to go to?
Well, I heard Jordan talking about what their most ordered coffee is, and it's a flat white with oat milk, right?
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah, I would order a flat white with oat milk.
Don't worry, so do I.
Unless I am in Spain, where I would order a cafe bonbon, if you've ever had one of them.
What's that?
All right.
A cafe bonbon is a double espresso with a sachet of condensed milk. And it is like rocket fuel if you're feeling a bit worn out. But I can't have a lot of it because I'm also lactose intolerant. So it's like a one and done. It's a one and done kind of policy per day on that one. But be an oat flat white would be what I order. Or sometimes I will just have a double espresso, but I normally will have an oat flat white. And favorite coffee shop, there's my dog. Oh, my dog's just come to say hi. Hello, buddy. My favorite coffee shop is a good question. If I'm in London, there's probably a few, and I have to say Giro, because what Jordan has done and created is truly amazing. And for how long it's been going and the community that he's created from that what was originally just like a little, it was his baby, but I don't think he ever truly expected it to become what it's become. It's amazing. And he sells workshop coffee, which is fantastic coffee as well. So if I was down like London Way, workshop coffee 100%. And sorry, wait a sec, if I was down London Way, Giro selling workshop coffee, it would be 100% where I'd go. Where I live in the Peaks, my favorite coffee shop around here is a little place called Spout. Now, it is about 10 minutes away from where I live. It's a little independent cafe that does very, very has an amazing food menu, like lovely food, all fresh, made there in front of you. And the woman that runs it, she's called Ruth, and they're only open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And the reason why they're not open Monday, Tuesday, and Sunday is because Ruth is baking all the cakes herself.
Amazing.
So it's just a really lovely little independent cafe, and just kind of cool and quirky inside. And they've got an old like dodgem in the garden out the back, like like funfair dodgems, like random stuff like that. But they just do really good food there as well. So me and my partner go there quite a lot with our dog. Let the dog in, dog gets a treat. That's probably my favourite to where I live locally, and then my favourite down in London. Because not many people are going to ever have heard of Spout. So I would just say, if you want to get out of London and ride in where I believe is the best cycling place in the whole of the United Kingdom, which is the Peak District, where I live, I live in a little town called Leek. And there's 3, 4, or 5 exceptional coffee shops, but Spout is up there as one of the best ones, definitely.
Fair.
I could list off all the others, but I won't.
Well, look, Chris, thanks for coming on our podcast. Like I said at the start, you were on our list of someone we really wanted to get to know. And when NJ and I started this podcast, to be honest with you, it was actually so we could just talk to people that we'd like to get to know. It was kind of a pyramid scheme to get people to come on a cobbled group ride.
Yeah.
Change the date and I'm in.
Yeah.
Don't worry, there'll be another one.
Yeah. But where can people find you? And what can people expect?
You can, I guess, like if anyone like ever has any questions about like anything ultra cycling or anything related, like just I really make a real conscious effort to reply to every single message, which can take some time. So understand that I might not reply straight away, but I will always make a point of replying. So you can drop me messages on Instagram where my handle is Chris Hall Rides, and a lot of the charity challenges, the ultra races, like I've tried to document them as best I can, which is all on YouTube now, which has been my baby love project for the last 2 years now. I think year and a half, 2 years. I don't know now, year and a half. Which has been really fun. I've really enjoyed it. But I've tried to document so many of these kind of ultras and these charity projects on there to kind of showcase the countries, the races, and the events and stuff. And that if you search for Chris Hall Rides on YouTube, that will come up as well. But yeah, like genuinely, like I like to hope that there's a lot of knowledge in my brain that people can find useful. And if anyone has questions about stuff, like please reach out, and I'm more than happy to help in any way I can.
Amazing.
And not making a coffee though, because I'm not very good at making coffee.
Well, amazing. As I said, Chris, thanks for coming on, and everyone else will speak to you next week. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for coming on, Chris. Thanks. Bye.
Bye. Bye.